Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
As part of our creativity series, we brought in Morgan Tierney and Karen Pearce from the Canadian creative powerhouse agency called Rethink, who last year won a Grand Prix, 5 golds, 8 silvers, 12 bronze, and 23 shortlists at the Cannes Lions. And today we're talking a lot about crafts, the framework that allows them to win all these awards and do it repeatedly. It's a great episode. Hope you enjoy it. This episode's been sponsored by Quadical, fractional marketing leadership using evidence-based marketing practices. That's quadical.com.
Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast, a place for business leaders to get the best and most credible information on marketing, strategy, and innovation. Your hosts, Marc Binkley and Vassilis Douros, share their experiences as they gather insights from the world's leading experts. Now, on with the show.
Welcome back to the show. Today, we are very lucky to have two brilliant people join us. Karen
Hey,
Pearce.
I'm here too, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
It's three.
Three. Karen Pearce and Morgan Tierney from Rethink, which is arguably one of the most recognized and awarded creative agencies or agencies in general in the world, but they just so happen to be from Canada, which is awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
Canada. So timely too.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's timely.
Just to quickly, thanks to both of you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited that you're here. This is going to be a super high energy episode, and I can't wait. So there's this infamous study. I just want to set the context for this because there's this infamous study from Kantar and Paul Dyson. It's been done a couple of times, but the last time they did it, I think, was in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And so they looked at the top 10 ad factors that drive ad profitability. And so aside from brand size, which has the biggest share of impact on ad profitability, creative came in at number 2. And it was more, the impact of creative was more than things that you would normally think of are really impactful, like budget setting across geographies, budget setting across portfolios, variants of different ads, and then multimedia. And so what we're going to be talking about a lot today is the power of creative and specifically your role and how you guys think about creative and creating great campaigns that actually deliver big impact. So you've got this crafts framework we're going to get into more. And we're just really excited to have you both here to talk about this because it's such an amazing topic that it doesn't get enough attention. So again, welcome.
Thank you. I love that. Creativity wins.
And it's perfect because, let's start with this because I think there's a lot of, in that study, the second part of that was they surveyed marketers and asked them, what do you think are the biggest drivers? So what marketers thought were the biggest drivers in order was brand. Creative is number 4. Brand versus performance, number 1, or multimedia, number 1. Brand versus performance, number 2, and then our audience targeting is number 3, and then creative came in at 4th. So, why do you think it is that marketers undervalue creative?
Yeah, that's an interesting study. I think it also shows we need more advocates in marketing for sure. Just like the power of creativity is so important. But I would say, like at its highest level, when you take a step back out of marketing, out of advertising, like creative expression in general, the power of play, the arts, you could consider them all undervalued. Like they're always fighting for funding, and I think the perception is that they're nice to haves and not imperatives. And despite all kinds of evidence that shows how each one of them are so impactful and effective, but I think maybe, a lot of hypotheses around on this, but maybe the measurement behind them is either not mainstream, it's more complex, it's expensive to track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's sentiment out there and it requires probably some translation and interpretation versus like a quick, hits to this, how did it convert here? So I think you take all of that and you take what it takes to actually develop a brand, which is over time, consistency, persistence, patience to build a great brand over time is really the long game. So I think when you take all of those factors and you put them in a business that's reporting on a quarterly basis and needs, it's like short term, like how do we turn a profit? This is down. I think brand loses out and therefore marketing. It's easy to turn off digital advertising. It's easy to pull a project versus, stopping the track on product innovation or something like that.
You bring up a really Sorry, go ahead, Morgan.
It's so ethereal, Karen. It's so intangible. It can't be measured. As the creative person on the call, I'm just like, it should be number one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you guys bring up both very valid points. And I think digital has done a lot for us when we think about, you know, all the great things we can put in market very quickly. But it's also that flexibility has also come as a detriment, right? When the business needs to react, needs to cut budgets and things like that. And I think that's created this weird economy that we're working in the marketing space now, where we hail everything from things that we can do, but we also know how quickly we can turn it off if we have to, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to pivot to Morgan. Morgan, as an ECD, how important is breakthrough commercial impact to you?
I think you might have already gotten a hint at my answer
glimpse.
a minute ago. But as the ECD,
It's a very leading question.
Leading the witness here.
It's the thing, really. I think the thing is, it's not enough to just. We always talk about competing for attention. It's not just enough to get someone's attention. We have to make them care. We have to find creative ways to make ads that people want to talk about and want to share and make work that the world wants to talk about. So we're not just farming for impressions. The creative solutions are the ones that are going to break through. And today we're going to talk about some of the ways that Rethink has tried to bake that creative excellence into our process. So trying to consistently open the door for great work that's going to get talked about at home here in Canada and around the world.
Can I just pick at the creative breakthrough for a second? Because I feel like you said about farming for impressions, and I feel like there's a difference between something that's just going to get shared versus something that makes an impact. Do you separate the two at all on your end, or is...
I mean, there's shares that you don't really give a second thought, and then there's things that resonate on an emotional level, on a personal level, things that really ring true and give us pause. So I don't know if necessarily all shares are created equal. And there's the share that's clicking the little share button on a TikTok or a reel. And then there's the share, the ultimate share is, Rethink, we call it the cocktail party test. What's the thing that you want to tell someone about at your next cocktail party? Apparently, we're all going to a lot of cocktail parties.
I guess.
But yeah, what's the thing that you would actually talk about with a friend and say, hey, did you see that thing? So when we pitch broadcast spots, we often talk about them through that lens. So what's the thing with the spot that's going to stick in someone's mind? And what's the cocktail party moment? Did you see the one with blank? That single sticky piece of imagery or idea.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I like that.
Karen, can you tell us a little bit about, Rethink, I mentioned a little bit about one of the most decorated companies out there. You guys have had a good run. Can you, maybe...
Not a bad run at all.
Yeah, like I'm really not giving it enough credit by saying that. So do you mind kind of just giving us a little bit of context around that? Yeah,
for sure. The awards are really a byproduct of, it's as cheesy as it sounds, but it's a byproduct of living our values, which is respect, finding what's rewarding in what we work on, and being relentless in the pursuit of great work. And underlying all of that is responsibility. And that's to us, to each other, to our clients and the impact, but also to the greater industry at large. So you can see a lot of things that Rethink puts out there, like no meeting Mondays, because we don't want people working on the weekends. We have Independence Week, which is we give everyone the first week of July off. We have, I think we put out pet insurance last year, right, Morgan? Just because pets are part of the family. So the awards are a byproduct of living our values, like the ones I just said, but also we're so intentional in setting the conditions for great work so that everyone can be successful, including our clients. So that's really, we call it the Rethink way, the Rethink machine. We put that out, but we do have a process that really takes chaos out of creativity. And that's really what's behind all the awards. So living out the values and then having this process for repeatable success. Yeah. I think that's really important because it doesn't just happen by accident. And I'll just pump your tires a little bit because you guys have won Agency of the Year. Is it now 6 years in a row?
In Canada.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you just won the Cannes Line Grand Prix, if I'm not mistaken, for Independent Agency of the Year. right?
Creative effectiveness.
And creative effectiveness.
Yeah.
Which are not just small ads they give out to anybody. I mean, this is like it's like the Super Bowl of advertising awards, and you won the Super Bowl, kind of. So it's pretty incredible that you guys have had these successes. And I think it's really fascinating that your intentional operating structure is designed to create that kind of output.
Yeah, it's always been in our DNA since the very beginning at Rethink. And I've been at Rethink Vancouver for 13 years, so just about half of its existence. But right back to the founders, Rethink was founded on the premise that there had to be a way to take that chaos out of the creative process. So just because creativity can be perceived as this intangible, ethereal, wacky thing, doesn't mean that it can't be harnessed and have a bit of structure applied to it to make it replicable. So it's one thing to win a can once, but to consistently deliver work that breaks through and gets shared over time, and to have a volume, a body of work that's all hitting for our clients across categories, being the best in category with all of our clients, that takes something beyond just audacious creativity. It takes a system. So Rethink, we're actually very disciplined in the way that we approach creativity. And a lot of it is just trying to peel back the layers and create an environment where creative people can do their best and get to that consistent output.
Yeah. I would add to that too. It's where rethinkers can thrive and do the best work. If they want to do the best work, you got to put the work in to do your best work. But I'd also say that, we've got the systems in place, and then you need the partnerships in place, which is so huge. You go nowhere if you've got a client that's not, you guys aren't working together and transparent and vulnerable and kind of in it together. So we spend a lot of time, like Morgan's talking about the systems that we have in place in this process for repeatable success. We keep talking about this part of our secret sauce, but it includes how we onboard clients. It includes the tools that we use. We have what we call great work game plans. So we're very intentional about, what the win is for each client. Right. And then we do a lot of after action reviews, AARs, which is really like a look back on everything that we've done and what could we have done better, what worked really well, what's a teachable moment for, some of our other clients that we're working on. So yeah, there's a lot baked in there, but if you don't have that partnership right up front with your clients, which I think Rethink can look pretty attractive out there. And they're like, hey, Rethink, all that stuff you've been doing over there, can you do that for us too? But they got to be in it too. It can't just be us with our magic. Right. They've got to be elbows at the table too.
Yeah, they don't get to just walk up to the drive-through window and say, one Rethink, please.
Yeah.
They have to do the work as well.
That would be kind of amazing, actually.
It would be nice, actually. It'd be great.
Fries with that?
Here you go. First idea.
Yeah.
Milkshake,
off
please.
Of the races.
Yeah.
I love everything that you guys was talking about. And Karen, one thing that you touched on there, take chaos out of creative. And I think that really resonates with me and thinking about how disciplined you have to be to our process to actually create this repeatably, which is incredible. And I'm going to stay with you, Karen, here for the next question. And if you'll recall when we went through the prep call and for this interview, there are a few requirements that you brought up on, how to really make those ads work. Can you share some of those thoughts? And you alluded to a few of them just before, but I want to make sure we give you enough time to articulate them all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know we're going to get into partnerships, but we do have a specific way that we onboard. So number one, you got to have the partnership in place. Number two, you have to have the systems in place. Like we say, the Rethink way is what we call it. But then on top of that, it's a combination of a lot of other factors. So, we talk a lot about building brands that can live in culture, and that is, cultural fluency, I guess we call it, where you're able to kind of react to what's going in culture with the brand. That means that you have to really know and understand the brand so well that you understand how it behaves. So when moments happen in time, you can kind of jump on it in that, in the brand's way that only that brand can react to it. So we like to develop brands that can live in culture. We talk about developing distinctive brand assets as well, which are really important. I know there's been a lot of conversation around differentiation and distinctive brand assets. I think they're both important. You can build product differentiation At some point, a competitor may catch up to that. So the distinctiveness is really important. And then I think you also have to look at how you're bringing together emotional and functional storytelling, which is, it's not one or the other. No. Like everything you put out there can be a product ad. It just has to be wrapped in, a relatable, emotional way, whether it's laughing or crying or just a real aha moment for people. It feels really intuitive to them. And then I would say, lastly, we've talked about this, but just having a shared language to evaluate creative is really important to making great ads.
I think that's one of the biggest things for me. When you talked about, two thoughts. One about the product thing. Apple is a common brand that a lot of people know and see and recognize and refer to because they do so many things so well. But for the most part, all of their product or all their ads are product ads.
Totally.
That just so happen to also be emotional. So I get your point. Like, you can have both. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other.
Yeah, they are brilliant.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Morgan.
I'm going to fan out for a second. I'm such a huge fan of their Leon the Lizard spot. A perfect example of that. Ad for deleting a text message. And they managed to hook you with this person who thinks they've killed someone's pet lizard. It's not a product spot. It's not a brand spot. It's an Apple spot. And then they just execute the hell out of it.
Yeah. And the second part that I thought is so fascinating is the idea around, like, kind of going back to the ethereal idea that you had mentioned before, Morgan. I've been in boardrooms where there's sometimes giant egos that go, no, absolutely. And then other times, some of it maybe is coming from a place of fear, but other people who are honest sometimes will go, I have no idea how to comment on this. Like, I don't have anything. Like, I don't know how to, if it was in a spreadsheet, I could tell you the number and it does this add up to that and all that kind of, what's the fork. But when it's a piece of creative, a lot of times people just don't have the language for it. And so maybe that's where we can jump off into crafts, because it's so interesting that you've built, I think this is part of the language, but that it does provide a structure for some dialogue and sort of like an Excel spreadsheet. What does it look like in these different categories and these different headers? And now a short word from our sponsor.
This episode was sponsored by Quadical. Did I say that right? Quadical?
You did. Quadical. Yeah.
Quadical. Mark, what is it?
Well, V, I'm glad you asked. Well, Quadical is my own company, actually. So, I'm the Sleeping Barber Podcast co-host with you, but I also have my own company. And so I'm happy to sponsor the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Love that.
In part because I give so much time to it. But Quadical is a fractional marketing leadership firm where we specialize in evidence-based marketing. And we do consulting work for companies typically between $30 to $300 million. And helping them navigate some of the challenges that people have, like, I know something's broken, but I'm not quite sure how to fix it, nor do I have the time to fix it.
Fair.
And so that's where we help out a lot of people.
Well, I'll speak for Mark as well, because you're wearing your Quadical hat right now. We appreciate your sponsorship of the Sleeping Barber Podcast. And for all those that may be interested, we do have a whole bunch of sponsorship options. Always looking to bring on new sponsors. We have a lot of creative ideas that can really help across a global audience.
Thanks, V.
No, thank you, Quadical. We appreciate your business.
And now back to the show.
It's my favorite kind of Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
You just see my day-to-day if you want spreadsheets.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of agencies have their own acronym for how they evaluate creative work, or how they say they evaluate creative work. But I'd say that's one of the biggest things at Rethink is we actually use ours as this shared language for the way that we talk about work internally, every day, constantly, in every meeting, and how we train our clients also to evaluate creative ideas. So it's the acronym is CRAFTS, and I can just give you a really high level rundown.
Please do.
Yeah. So the C stands for clarity, which is absolutely key. If your communications aren't clear, then none of the other letters matter. So first of all, say one thing clearly. And the R stands for relevance. And when we say relevance, we're really talking about timeliness. We like to ask ourselves, what's the ad we could only make now? And what is the ad we couldn't have made 10 years ago or 20 years ago? What's the thing that's happening in culture that we can participate in or speak to or do something about. So clear and relevant. And then achievable is the A. Obviously, can we pull this off? Is a very important question to be asking. We like to often lean towards, yes, of course we can. We can do anything. We do things all the time. It also has become a bit of a shorthand for execution. Like, can we pull this off to the level of craft that we want to? And can we keep a very high bar while pulling this off? The F stands for fresh. Fresh as in, if it's done, then we're not going to do it. If it's done, it's dead. So we always want to be coming up with new ideas that look at a problem through a different lens, come up with a new insight, execute something differently, always be doing something to make the idea fresh, be a world first if you can, even though everyone's always trying to be the world's first blank. The T stands for true. So not just is there an underlying truth or is there an insight that's true? Like that's kind of the low bar to clear is this factually true? It's more about, are you being true to your brand and true to your brand platform?
Okay.
Does your brand have permission to play in this space? And are people going to say like, not just, oh, that's so true, but oh, that's so true to Heinz exclusively. And that's such a thing that this brand has licensed to speak to. And then finally, rounding it out, the S stands for shareable. And if you score through the roof on relevancy or freshness or truth, you're going to unlock a lot of that shareability. So not all these letters, they're not weighted equally. Like I said, it is really a language. We're not looking to get a perfect score necessarily across crafts on every idea. But if we talk about ideas by using this framework, then at least we're speaking the same language. And it takes a lot of that toxic subjectivity out of advertising, where you're not going to get, oh, well, I don't like it because I don't like the color blue. And okay, well, I guess then we're done here. Like we'll ask, could you elaborate on that? What's not working for you? Right. Is it not feeling clear? Is it not feeling achievable? At the end of the day, is it going to be something that people care about and want to share? Is it going to be work that the world talks about?
I have a question, V. I feel like we've been in a whole bunch of meetings like this at various points in our career, but the clarity part.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's oftentimes, oh, I have this idea. That's good. What about, can we add this? Can we add this? How about, and by the end of it, you've got this thing that's got 800 messages trying to jam into a shoebox. And you're like,
yeah, I'm triggered just by hearing that.
Is that the idea? Is that you're trying to create one unique idea? Or...
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, you need to be able to explain your idea in a sentence. If you can't distill what you want to say down into maybe that soundbite that you could explain to someone at that cocktail party that you're allegedly going to, then you might be missing the mark on clarity. I think one thing that was one of the original Rethink-isms going way back to 1999 was the ping pong ball theory of advertising. So if I throw you one ping pong ball, you might catch it. If I throw you 5, you're probably going to miss all of them.
Right.
And the same is true of communication. Well, that was really true back then when you were maybe making one radio spot, one TV spot, and you could just say one thing really clearly. Now, in the social media era, it's more about sort of getting your ping pong balls in a row and saying the right single-minded message to the right person at the right time, in the right medium, on the right platform, in the right aspect ratio. It's gotten a little bit out of hand, but the clarity piece is just reminding ourselves that the human brain can only catch so many ping pong balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say too, like, make sure that we're not asking the audience to put the puzzle together.
A good point.
Like we have the vision in totality, like the comprehensive vision of what we're trying to get out there. But if it's not clear, like don't expect them to be putting the pieces together like they're living it like us every day.
Right.
Yeah, that's so true. We operate under this misapprehension that people are dying to see our ad, when in fact they're trying hard to run away, far, far away from it, and installing ad blockers. And we actually have art at Rethink at the office here in Vancouver that just, the posters just say skip ad as a reminder that no one wants to watch your ads, so you have to give them something compelling.
Yeah. And P.S. our boardroom tables are ping pong tables.
Yeah.
As a reminder.
We hit our shins on those all the time.
And I want to dig into crafts and then also the application when we think about highlighting some really great work. Also just wanted to quickly call out though, you keep hearing, and there's some research done, like ads don't wear out, they wear in and things to that effect. So I can see where something like this crafts framework actually can help build not only longevity in the campaigns or in the creative that you're looking to build, because I think at the end of the day I think we're all working in an environment where there's a lot of A&P pressurization, or we need to rethink of that and really build some of this creative for the long haul, which is something that maybe in previous states we're in a more privileged state where we could just rotate them out a lot more fluently than we have in the past. Sorry, than we can today. But Karen, I did want to dig into it. So I would love to pressure test, I guess, almost like crafts, the framework. Will I get some great creative that we have? You want to walk us through some of those?
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, I just want to comment on that too, because I think it's so true. And what we've seen is we used to have more, we call them like at-bats. Right. There used to be way more campaigns all the time. Like we were always doing stuff. And now just like you're saying through A&P, budget cuts and that kind of thing is there's less at-bats. And so the pressure to get every message in and, to choose what you're doing can almost be like paralysis. It's just,
I agree.
So we're totally empathetic to that with our clients. We understand that. I think it's, the communication plan is everything. Like Morgan was saying is, listen, like we can, if the overall air cover message is this, like you just have to be so much more strategic, I think, about like, what's the one thing we really want to say? Mm-hmm. And that can be kind of the air cover. And then, just very particular and again, intentional, I guess is the word, on how we're talking to them in all the different channels and where we're trying to get them. So anyway.
Here.
So application of crafts.
Yeah.
There's one example that we're talking about, which is, I'll say it's very high T, meaning high truth.
High truth.
High truth. Yeah.
Not
spill the tea.
Stuff. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. High T. Yeah, capital T truth in crafts, and then also an example of relevant, and that's WestJet. So a brand that I have a particular affinity to as well. I was part of the brand launch in 2005 for Owner's Care. So I know sort of the foundation and the beginning of the brand that was a very, very caring brand.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in real quick. For anyone that doesn't know, WestJet's a Canadian airline.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we just relaunched the brand in October of last year. It was over a year in the making to coincide with the CEO's vision of going back to its roots of being an affordable carrier for everyday Canadians. So the year was kind of digging into Canadians. What do they want? What does travel mean to them? How do they perceive the brand? Most importantly, we had to get input from what we call WestJetters, which is cabin crew, and everybody that works at WestJet, because we knew previously the power of that brand was from the inside out. The WestJetters really believed in the brand and they were sort of our advocates. I mean, that's the best of a branding world, is when people internally so believe in the brand that it just like exudes, outside of channels. People are just living it. They understand the behavior. So we spent a year sort of collecting that research. We recognized that WestJetters are really a huge part of what the brand is. We actually define them as a distinctive brand asset. So the insight for this brand was, and for the brand launch, is that your travel story takes off the moment you're sitting on that plane. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Being the caring brand that they are, WestJet realizes that they're a part of that journey along with you. So the tagline is where your story takes off. And so when we look at crafts across the board on that, it is very true for WestJet. It goes back. No one else can do that because it's in its roots. It's foundational to WestJet is being a caring, empathetic brand. It's in the DNA. And then we built this framework, especially in the out of home, that allows us to be really relevant with some of those stories. So for example, a visual would show thoughts on your way to a destination and then what you're thinking on the way back. So for example, it would say on the way there, it would say going to Barcelona. And then coming back, it would say it's pronounced Barcelona. Because we know that when you travel, it's like you embody where you are and you come back and you start saying, Barcelona.
I totally do that.
Right? And then
with Barcelona.
Yes.
Barcelona.
And then there's another, going to the destination, it says ring in pocket. And then coming back, it says ring on finger. Just the recognition, of course, that many romantic getaways and people, a lot of proposals when you're traveling. But I will say my favorite example was during election day, this past election day. And this is the relevant that Morgan's talking about, where it's so timely. It couldn't have happened any other way. And what we did was we put one social post out in the US, in California, on election day for 4 hours. And WestJet, again, being a really caring, empathetic brand, we knew that WestJet had a place because they're recognizing the anxiety that this was bringing and the tension that was alive and well in the US. And the single post said one-way flights to Canada. And that was it. And we put it out for 4 hours. It got 1 million impressions. I think actually by the end of it all, it was 4 million. But in 4 hours, 1 million impressions. It was 1,500% above benchmark for engagement. And then there were just other fun things that came out of it that really kind of talked back to us on what this brand is that was so helpful for us. So for example, first of all, I think there were 16 organic earned media pieces that were written, including Rolling Stone magazine wrote about it. We were like, what is happening? We were on TMZ.
No way.
The social post is on TMZ.
I mean, I know that's like a cocktail party conversation, right? We were on TMZ. Like, you just think about that for 4 hours. But, the way that people were talking about this brand, there was a radio, a conversation, a radio station in like Connecticut. And they were like, do you guys know about this brand WestJet? Like, it's not even they're talking in the US about this Canadian airline. Of course, we fly to the US, but they were like, oh my God, they're so scrappy and they're so much fun. And they were explaining what the brand is. And I mean, you can't measure that, going back to the very first conversation. It's intangible. But what it tells us is like, we've pushed the edges of this brand. We know how it behaves. We know what people like about it. And that can then inform like all the other things that we do thereafter. People want that from WestJet. So like, how do you measure that? I don't know. But that's a good example of relevant and shareable working together in that CRAS framework.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a
great
story.
Great example too. I'm a former WestJetter, by the way, so I can a lot of love for this stuff.
Yes, exactly. And now we're debating with all that's going on right now if we just do like seat sale on round trip Canadian tickets, domestic travel.
Exactly.
If you can do anything to impact the Canadian dollar exchange rate, that would be
that'd be great.
On it.
That's a great one. So there's quite a few examples. Heinz is another one that you have.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of hear a bit more about the background on that too.
I mean, we've done a lot of great work for Heinz, but I think there's two examples that kind of highlight some of the best of crafts. So I'm going to talk about two. One is Heinz ketchup and seemingly ranch. That was the Taylor Swift moment where Taylor was spotted at a Kansas City Chiefs game and someone tweeted, Taylor Swift is eating chicken strips with ketchup and seemingly ranch. And it was just that word choice that for whatever reason caught fire. And all of a sudden, all of the brands posted about it. So every ranch brand, everyone with any connection to ketchup or chicken or Taylor Swift or the Chiefs, every brand posted about it. But Heinz went a little bit further and created a product. So when that happened, all of our phones at Rethink melted. My gosh, they're talking about Taylor Swift and ketchup and ranch. What are we going to do? And we worked with Heinz to actually create and launch a new product called Ketchup and Seemingly Ranch. We had it on shelves and in people's hands. And the way we were able to do that is it happened that Heinz actually already had a product that was a mix of ketchup and ranch. It was called Cranch, and it was not a hot seller. So by reskinning Cranch, overnight, we were able to turn the lowly Cranch into a product that was outselling classic Heinz ketchup. And before we knew it, Walmart was reaching out, wanted to stock it. And we managed to support that with a really nice little media buy in Times Square and on some subway stations in New York. And we're able to win the moment when every brand wanted a piece of it, we were just able to take it that step further. And so that's one that I would consider extremely high relevancy with that, again, really quick turnaround, just like the one-way trips to Canada for WestJet. And really winnable. Sorry, I should put it in the crafts framework here. It was true in that Heinz was the ketchup brand that deserved to win the moment. And they had that permission space from having the product already to win that moment. That's a great example of relevancy. And a great example of an act. We talk about acts, not ads at Rethink, acts and ads. So always nice to do something versus just saying something. Another example for Heinz is ketchup fraud. So this is a great example of truth. So we know that certain businesses, certain, diners, restaurants are guilty of filling Heinz ketchup bottles with non-Heinz ketchup, so that you get the brand value of the Heinz on the table, but you're filling it with whatever ketchup you happen to have on hand. And this is the definition of the gold standard for a truth is something that only your brand can speak to. Right. Only Heinz is able to have that permission space to own the conversation around ketchup fraud, because we're the brand, it has to be Heinz. It has to be Heinz for these diners and restaurants to the point where they're willing to commit ketchup fraud. And when something hits the mark,
it's a felony.
So high on relevance and truth, you're going to get the shareability out of that. And then it's just up to you to take the ball and run with it and execute it to a very high level. So for us on ketchup fraud, that meant getting a really great world-class photographer to shoot some print ads for us. And it also meant giving people an opportunity to participate. So asking people to help us put gas on the fire by calling out spots that they thought might be committing ketchup fraud. Yeah, we got some great conversation going, including Fenway Park got accused of ketchup fraud, and they ultimately ended up doing something about it. So we affected change in the world.
Ketchup change.
That one, ketchup change. Yes, the best kind of change.
One hot dog at a time.
Changing the world one hot dog at a time. We actually, just sidebar, we did one more for Heinz, was the Heinz hot dog pact. So finally doing something about the fact that there's 10 hot dogs in a pack, but only 8 buns. Right. So Heinz stepped up to start a petition to called the Hot Dog Pact to finally end the madness. And this turned out to be an issue that people really cared a lot about. I know it dates all the way back to that scene with Steve Martin in Father of the Bride. Where he freaks out in the grocery store. But that was another one where we had a really nice good news story because we teamed up with Wonder to actually solve the problem. To solve it.
That's amazing.
Who's now a Rethink client.
Yes. No way. New business opportunity.
It's so high truth, right? That when you see ads out there, or like in this case, an act, it feels intuitive. It's like, are they reading my mind? And then you're connected to it. So
it's funny. Like I can see how some of the conversations might have gone, like for example, Fresh. Yeah. We've all seen that package, the 2 different packages, and wondered the same thing probably over and over again. But I don't think I've ever seen anything done about it.
Right.
But it's been staring us in the face for however many decades.
Yeah, it can make you feel like, oh, duh. It's almost like it makes you feel like just a little bit of a tinge of rage. Like, why did no one think of this sooner? It was right there for the taking.
It's right in front of there, yeah.
Exactly. And that it makes an idea even more compelling. If anyone could have done something about it, a hot dog brand could have done something about it. Any hot dog bun brand could have done something about it. And it was right there the whole time for Heinz.
When you're in both those situations, like the WestJet one and the Heinz one, like you talked a little bit before about distinctive assets, Karen, does the idea come first and then you figure out where the distinctive assets go? Or is it like you're always thinking about the distinctive assets for the brand and then maybe it's not as planned that way? It's more just about the organic nature of how to execute. And I don't know, how do you get the recognition for the brand? Or make sure that the brand isn't lost in the idea.
Right. I think that in those instances that are both very reactive moments where something is happening in the world and the brand reacts by doing something. In those moments, it's really just all of Rethink. We've all trained our brains to see the world through ketchup tinted glasses and always be on the lookout for those cultural moments when brands have that opportunity to be in the conversation. So the first step is identifying the moment. And then the next step is figuring out how to leverage distinctive brand assets to own that moment. So for Heinz, it could be the color red. It could be the keystone shape. It could be the bottle itself. Or it could be slow. Yeah, so the slowness.
Like the tagline is, it has to be Heinz. So that's what those moments, like the hot dog pack, you're like, it has to be Heinz. You know, Heinz fraud, it has to be Heinz. Like, yeah.
One more ketchup one, just because we're piling on the ketchup here. We did one
my favorite condiment.
Called clearly called Draw Ketchup, where we asked a bunch of people to literally just draw ketchup, and they all drew Heinz. So they drew the keystone, they drew the bottle, they drew the distinctive brand asset, and that's the most very literal translation of it has to be Heinz. If it's ketchup, it is Heinz.
I absolutely love these real life examples. I'm going to ask Mark, do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get in this one too. So Karen, are you going to take TELUS?
Sure. Yeah. Near and dear to you.
A little near and dear. Yeah.
And TELUS is a Canadian telco. And, I'm sure this is relatable maybe for a few people listening too, is that, this is about selling a product in a commoditized arena. So even when there is differentiation, so TELUS, for example, sells internet that is 100% pure fiber internet, where the competitors, it's not 100%, but to the customers, it's all the same. Like my internet works. It's, they're not making the distinction with TELUS's differentiation, if that makes sense. They don't care as much. And in that commoditized arena, you'll find a lot of very functional claims-based advertising. We're the fastest, we're this, we're that, and again, if you look at a brand as a person, which we do, it's like you have to build that connection with that person. What is that person about? How do they behave? But also, do I like them? So for TELUS, there was this clear opportunity to tell a more emotive, sort of purpose-driven story about how their superior products makes people's homes and lives friendlier, because their tagline is "the future is friendly." So this is about proving out what that product does in your life versus staying up in this claims-based fight that's very functional. So what we ended up doing was we took it and we said, what better way to do this than to look at high stakes moments in people's lives with internet? Like what happens when you're using internet in a high stakes moment, and not always capital H high stakes, but like maybe more lowercase high stakes. But if you're a parent out there and you're registering for summer camp, like just take a minute there, any parent that's listening, and remind yourself how stressful it is when they say it opens at 9:00 in the morning and it's a lottery to get in. And if your internet is out, your summer is ruined. Like it's a difference between a wonderful, amazing summer. We love our kids, but like, you got to get them in summer camp.
Now. My wife and I were just having that conversation. Like, oh God,
yes,
when
I know.
All the registration's open. We're like, oh my God, I'm so far behind.
It's already started. I'm in it too. And so it's such a real relatable moment, and it's so emotional. So how do you take the products and then put it, again, every ad's a product ad, but how do you connect it emotionally? So from a craft standpoint, it's relevant more in a relatable way versus relevant in a timely way. And it's super clear, because what we ended up doing is just doing a side-by-side comparison of somebody using a competitor's brand over TELUS's brand, and the success. And we just had a lot of fun kind of playing around with the people that didn't get in, and also what it takes when you're in, and how like stressful it is, and what are their allergies, what are like just all the information that you have to put in. So yeah, we've kind of built this campaign, and there'll be a series of them on these high stakes moments that they really are kind of game changers, and they're very relatable and relevant. And it's very true to TELUS, because they are about making the future friendly. So yeah, so it was a bit of a movement for sure for TELUS to get out of that claims-based place. And the results were, sort of 5-time year-over-year conversion rate increase. So going back to effectiveness, it does work. People related to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, lots of other good results, but.
Yeah. Can I ask you, in all those scenarios, sorry, you go ahead, Morgan.
No. I was just going to make a comment that anyone who's worked on telco in that space knows the pressure that you get to make claims about the network. To talk about the largest network and the most reliable network and claim all these claims, but how do you make that personal to an individual? Thinking about it's hard to conceptualize a network or even think about the invisible internet that's flying through the air.
Totally.
So Karen and the TELUS team did a really amazing job landing the plane on something that felt not just personal, but like mission critical. To keep your kids out of the house in the summer.
And to that point, I feel like almost the entire B2B industry is built on feature benefit, which misses the whole point of that emotional connection. The question I wanted to ask, though, is like in all three of those cases, there's some kind of insight that unlocks this sort of evaluation around the crafts. Where does that come from? Is that like a market research thing, or is it just that you all have crafts rolling through like software in your brain and you just every moment is an opportunity to apply it?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with that, but it is like Morgan said at the beginning, it's a tool we use, but it's to prompt discussion. So it's not like actually, we do grade it sometimes, just internally when we do kind of retrospective on the work that we've done. But yeah, I think it's like it's an evaluation tool that creates discussion. It can be different. It's not 100% this or 100% that, but yeah, just a shared language that allows us to evaluate creative in the same way and stay out of that subjective place that can just take you down paths. You can miss your audience. And forget about them. You can put the same kind of work out there that everyone else is doing. That's fresh is so important, so it just kind of, you just get into a routine and you start to roll with it with your clients and speak in that same language, and you're going to get to better advertising.
A lot of it's just about being immersed in culture. You have to absorb culture to create culture. And that just means being chronically online, listening, having lots of conversations with lots of interesting people. We like to say we talk to people, not about people, and just being a plugged in, curious person in the world, like in a world where the same market research is available
for everybody.
In a lot of cases to a lot of people.
Fair.
And other clients can't necessarily afford to conduct their own studies and get their own research. I think that there is still a place for good old fashioned curious listing. Which is the classic creative answer.
No, it's perfect though. Like curiosity is everything for sure. Like we're a bunch of ad nerds, that we just break apart everything. We talk about all the ads out there.
We do.
And everything that's going on in culture and, dissecting Grammys from last night and all the things. And
I haven't even gotten into that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know that when we think about the creative ideas, the processes behind that, sometimes in many organizations out there, sometimes it can be somewhat unsettling, right? And when we think about the rigor that's required, or the opinion groups or the focus groups of one that come in nonstop in a lot of this, because it can be perceived somewhat subjective. We also know that bureaucracy can really just kill an idea. Right. And when you've lost that moment in time where, you've come up with a fantastic idea and had to pivot because, you couldn't get the approvals in time. Morgan, maybe you can kind of double click into that a little bit. And how can you circumvent that? How can you set up better processes? Love to hear what you think.
I mean, you can't always, unfortunately, it's going to happen. And I think part of being a creative is being resilient and knowing that sometimes ideas are going to be wounded, sometimes critically wounded by committees, by dulling down the edges of the idea, by trying to put too many ping pong balls in because there's just one media buy for the whole year. Knowing that everyone's under pressure to deliver. Sometimes ideas get wounded, and our philosophy is if it's wounded, let it die.
Right.
Take it off the table and come back with something else, because we can always come back with something else that's got more of a chance of getting through the gauntlet, making it out the other end and into the world in something closer to its purest form. We've all got really thick skin. We're all used to seeing
I love that.
a million different little ideas die, but I like to think that we're not just here to come up with ideas. We're here to be idea shepherds, trying to get all of our little baby ideas through all of the maze that they
That
have.
visual right now.
And help them grow up strong and release them into the wild. But yeah, I think that we can try as hard as we can to avoid those pitfalls. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to get ahead of it. So when we bring in a new client, we have what's called a relationship accelerator with that client, where we get all of our pet peeves and all of our worst practices and everything out on the table before we've had the opportunity to do any work together. We air all of our dirty laundry before it has a chance to be personal, so that we know what each other's triggers are and we know what the obstacles are that are going to stand between us and doing our best work before there's actual work on the table. So I do think that it is, at the end of the day, about relationships. It's about creating an environment of trust when both sides feel empowered to say the thing that's on their mind, and having that language so that when we do say the thing and we've got the foundation of trust, that we're not going to get all offended and take our ball and go home, that we have the shared language of craft so that we can ground the conversation in something where, at least we're speaking the same language, even if we disagree.
Look at that framework coming back.
I know.
All that.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Karen? I feel like
cocktail party.
Yeah. I mean, Morgan said that really, really well. And like, Morgan's so great at just immediately, working with a client to go, okay, just with curiosity that you talked about, Morgan, like you're so good at that, just coming to the table on like, okay, what's not working? And we're just all so clear on where we're headed for the most part with our clients, that it's all about solving a problem through creativity. But yeah, like the relationship accelerator is so important. We've talked about it a couple of times. It is based on like the 4 psychological stages of team development, based on Bruce Tuckman, I think it is.
I was thinking it was Seinfeld. Wasn't that airing of grievances?
Yes, the public airing.
Yeah.
All part of Festivus. That's all this is.
Festivus, yes.
Some feats of strength later.
I love it. And so it's norming, storming, forming, and performing. And so what Morgan's talking about is, let's get into storming before it actually happens. And so we talk about all kinds of things. And like that bureaucracy question, does it kill creativity? Like, yeah, if you've got 7 layers of people that aren't connected back to what we're actually trying to do, and they've got different ideas of what they want in the communication, and they're not part of the briefing, and they're not, can we talk about that in proactively, to say, we just want to know straight up, like, this is what we're dealing with. And it's something we cannot change within our organization, or we can't change it right now. So we'd rather just know straight up so that we can get ahead of it, so that we can, like a couple of times you'll go forming, storming, norming, up back to storming, you don't want to hang out there too long, but ultimately you want to get to high performing, because that's when the good stuff happens. That's when you're reacting to culture. You can quickly and nimbly get stuff out there. You have such high trust, and you're okay with a little discomfort because you really trust each other.
And then when we go to a client on the weekend and say we want to launch a new product in less than 48 hours, they don't laugh in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've kind of worked through like what that can look like. So it's really important. We actually do the relationship accelerator. We do it to kick off a new relationship, but then we'll bring it back too. Like it could be 1 year later. It could be like we've had A&W for 25 years, and we just we bring that back every once in a while. So, but Morgan touched on just one other quick thing is on what we call say the thing. And it's based on Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor. And we took it in at Rethink, and we called it Compassionate Candor. And now we just say the thing, because it's actually what we do. We're like, okay, I'm just going to say the thing. It's a really beautifully opening.
Compassionate Candor was not saying the thing.
Yeah. So,
I love that.
It's so good. And it gets you into really tough conversations just to go, okay, I'm just going to say the thing. And then people around you are kind of prepared. But Kim Scott talks about the 4 quadrants of, what is it?
Radical candor.
Of radical candor, I guess. Yeah. And there's one quadrant that we, especially as Canadians, hang out in a lot. And it's called ruinous empathy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just the recognition that we don't actually say the thing because we think we're being kind to each other. We think we're being just nice. So the way it looks like is, no, I like it. I mean, maybe it could work. And then 2 days later, you get like 2 pages of email of feedback. So that's where we also have a thing called Love It for a Minute. So maybe it comes into like, just love it for a minute, just hold on to it for a minute. But anyway, the point is ruinous empathy, you get to the same place as you would if you said the thing, just maybe like 2 weeks later or 4 weeks later or 2 months later, or, and that's not a high performing team. You just want to be able to get to a good place with high trust, vulnerability, say the thing, because we're all out to do the same thing.
One of the things I love about the relationship accelerators, to me, it's, you're going to be in a moment at some point when a campaign has got to go, there's a yes, no decision, go, no go decision, which is usually an intense moment because there's a ton of risk on the table. So what I love about the relationship accelerators, you're kind of removing away the objections, like as a former sales guy, like you're anticipating objections by having this conversation when there's not a high pressure moment, when there's not a huge risk to saying the right or wrong thing. It's just, this is how we feel, this is how we think. And then by taking that off the table, then there's a whole bunch of layers of garbage you don't have to get through in the moment, which is so smart.
Great point.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because when you're in those high pressure moments, I feel like maybe people don't feel heard. They feel like you don't understand. And we've had a chance to talk about the realities of what they're facing. So there's more empathy that we bring into that, to be like, we're in one of those moments. We understand the realities that you're facing. Like truly, we know we're coming at it with empathy. And also, no one likes to do something that feels unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And no one likes to feel discomfort, but that's actually where the magic is. If you take it through crafts, like if you have the proper discussion around it, so it's good to get ahead of those conversations, but that's what it's meant to do.
Man, amazing. What a banger of an episode to kick off our creative series. I gotta say, this has been incredible. How can people find out more about the work that you guys are doing? What Rethink's kind of what has coming up and things to that effect? Yeah, maybe Morgan, kick off with you.
Sure. Definitely check out our website, rethinkideas.com. Karen and I are both always kicking it on LinkedIn.
Kicking it on LinkedIn. There.
Yeah.
Morgan's personal phone number is...
Please. And if you're interested in learning more, we mentioned so many Rethinkisms on this call. It can be a little overwhelming. We have a book of 52 tools to help take the chaos out of creativity. The book's called Rethink the Business of Creativity, and it is available on Amazon or wherever you get your business books.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This has been such a treat. Like, I really feel like this was a masterclass. This is so good.
It was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah,
it was really fun.
Yeah,
what a way to end a Monday.
Yeah,
right. It's not as bad as it was.
See,
I feel better.
It's like really dark now. I don't know if everyone noticed.
Like my window, like
the sun is gone.
Well, thanks again so much. This is great. It was awesome having you guys on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. It was really fun.
If you like this show, please leave a review. And even if you didn't, we'd love to make this show better, and your feedback will help us do that.
I don't know about you, but I'm buzzing after that episode.
Whoa.
Holy smokes. I don't know, man. I love Karen, right? And I know we both know her.
Yeah.
Outside of work, and she's just incredible. And she just so happens to be working for an incredible agency, and they do some really, really good work that's globally recognized. And the fact that it's all local, so to speak, right?
Totally.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, they're honestly, all the awards they've been winning and stuff. It's
insane.
Yeah, it is. It's insane how much they win, and not just like these are effectiveness awards and work effectiveness awards and like all that stuff. It's not just because it's good creative. It's actually the impact that they're having on these brands is insane.
I agree. And I think what I appreciated the most is not only did they take the time to talk to us, but they broke it down as well. Like there's to do this consistently. What's the saying that you always say, like every blind squirrel can find a nut at times or something like
that's
that.
Like me in hockey.
I heard your 1-game point streak came to an end last night as well.
It did.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But to create this not legacy. Well, maybe it is turning into a legacy because the agency's been around for 13 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Longer. I don't know exactly, but I think it's
a longer than that?
Yeah, because Morgan was saying something about
she's been there as long as they have, as the agency has. So I think she said 13 years.
Oh, okay.
I could be mistaken, but anyways, they've been able to have repeated success here.
Yeah.
So obviously there's something that's working. There's a framework in place. And obviously the first thing that comes to mind to me is that Craft's framework.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really well articulated. I think it kind of captures not only the ethos of what they're trying to do, but also the method to create that success that they have.
Yeah. I thought there were so many interesting things about that too, because the idea of creative, and I know probably all of us have some way been in a creative meeting where there's, the agency comes in, they've got this deck, almost no words on it, and just a couple images, and they're really good at presenting. And then you're sitting there at the end of it going, okay, well, now what?
Now what?
And so, and especially when you've got people from, say, purchasing in a room, or like the CFO in a room, or, people that aren't traditionally creative minded or creatives, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there going, okay, well, I don't know. Do you like it or not?
I know.
Like trying to find a way to have a good, meaningful conversation around creative is often challenging.
Yeah.
When you've got so many different people in a room.
I agree.
So many different backgrounds. So the crafts framework for me is brilliant because it allows people a way to speak about stuff and it doesn't make them feel like they're idiots, let's say.
Totally.
They now have a way to have a communication approach about something that is somewhat ethereal.
Yeah, and it's also, you can also judge it based on these things. So just again, for clarity, for those that probably were scurrying trying to write down what it is. So CRAFT stands for clarity, relevance, achievable, fresh, truth, and shareable. Now, when you think about that, even when you have a campaign that's in market, you can then assess it based on those things as well. Like, is the message clear? Do we have that credit? Is it culturally relevant? And I like that both Morgan and Karen consistently talked about that. Like, it's going to change, but the more you can make something that resonates culturally in the moment, the better opportunity it has to be successful. Is it achieving what we set out to do? Execution, the feasibility, and the quality of it. The freshness. The approaches, and really thinking about how can it be a world first, so to speak. Kind of keep things really, really. I don't want to overuse the word fresh, but it's fresh, I guess. Truth, your own brand's truth, and that it's not a big departure of who you are, what you stand for, and it's still somewhat. A consumer can make that connection. Oh yeah, that is Apple, or that is TELUS, that is WestJet. And then finally that is shareable. And I think they're making, it's not just shareable, say on social, but it's like cocktail party shareable, something that you're really excited to talk about, which again, when you think about that framework, it's really easy to see why they've had that kind of success or that ongoing success. Because if this is the rigor that they apply to it, along a few other things that I'm sure we're going to highlight, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, that example of it has to be Heinz, the idea of the brand truth, I thought was really, it really kind of landed for me in that you want any piece of creative to be a platform for the brand. Yeah. And so the idea of it has to be Heinz as a gut check, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was fascinating was their idea about the relationship accelerator.
100%.
Because you don't, in the moment of like a campaign needing to go out is not when you have to have all of these conversations about how do we work together, what are the guidelines, what's the sandbox we can play. Because if you're doing all of that in the moment, that's a lot of stuff to kind of work through.
I agree. And you end up doing none of it at the end of it today. Having that in place up front, I think also kind of gives you, even from Rethink's perspective, understanding all the different layers and complexities that every organization has, because some are more marketing forward than others that I'm sure that they've worked with. And setting that expectation, I think goes a long way at the onset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would really love to highlight that say the thing.
Oh yeah.
Like that for me was amazing, because we've all, again, been in those meetings where in our minds, like, we know exactly what the feedback needs to be, but we dance around it. We're not very direct with it, but creating that space to be really direct in those moments by just saying, I'm just going to say the thing that everyone's thinking right now, I think is incredible. A nice little like tactic to use.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. I'm going to definitely steal that, because you're right.
Me too.
There's also, you can talk about, I think it came from that Radical Candor book or whatever the framework was called. But like courageous conversations is that was one of the things I remember hearing in a bunch of different organizations that, that we really encourage courageous conversations and have candor and all that kind of stuff. But then it doesn't really land, because it's also a little bit foreign. Like, what does that really mean? And so to have something like say the thing as a tool, I got it. I'm just going to say the thing. Like, I instantly can adopt something like that.
Like immediately it can be applied. And just when you say it, I think it naturally, like as a receiver of that phrase, you're almost like, okay, I'm preparing myself for something to be really direct. And I think that's an incredible cue to use when you're trying to get a message across.
Yeah. Especially because then it's not tied to me, for example. Like, I feel like I would be something I would throw out as a thing to address because it's a thing.
Exactly.
Not because it's necessarily my opinion. It's just it's something we have to speak about and figure out what the solution is around it.
Another success factor. So we talked about the relationship accelerator. We talked about say the thing. Another one that comes to mind that I know we have 100% seen this, not only at our time together, but like we continue to see this, is focus on building trust and removing bureaucracy. I think that's a big one where every organization is guilty of this in some capacity, where you have too many layers that could impact your speed to market or could impact really creative ideas, because everyone's focused on that focus group of one, where you have 3 or 4 key stakeholders that hold the trump cards, if you will. And if they're not aligned to something, then it goes to die. And I think really, really getting ahead of that is a big step in creating that right sandbox for creatives to really excel. Yeah.
And the idea that I think it was Morgan saying, if they've got an idea and it gets wounded along the way.
Yeah. That's a great,
Yeah. Sometimes I think a lot of us would be in a position of, me for sure, I would want to fight for an idea and like tooth and nail to the bitter end. And her take was just let it die.
It's dead.
Yeah. Which is kind of refreshing, because it also, like say the thing, it disconnects you from it being something about me, and it's just about the idea. And there's lots of ideas. So let's come up with a better one.
Totally. What was the other things, like the whole, everyone wants to herd their sheep of ideas, those sheeps into becoming lambs, or sorry, lambs to become into sheep or whatever.
Yeah.
I think Morgan kind of used that, sometimes it's your idea may be good, but like in that moment, maybe we just, we need to move on to something different. And it's okay. And having that thick skin, I think, goes a long way, especially if you're creative. The last one I had from a success factor and was balance between emotional storytelling and product messaging. making sure that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be finding that balance between both, I think goes, again, a long way to creating some of those incredible ads. Apple does it.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit like what we were just discussing too. I mean, with brand versus performance, it's not necessarily that it has to be an either or.
No.
Like you can have, and you've made this point a couple of times, which I think is great. You can have a performance campaign that is really well branded.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Similarly, I think you can have a very emotional campaign that has a great product placement in it. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. What else stood out for you?
I think it's more just the stories around how they got to they won the Cannes Lion for effectiveness for Heinz, but the stories behind Heinz, the stories behind WestJet, the stories behind TELUS. I think for me, it's the creative is great.
Yeah.
But it's more the systems and processes that
100%.
allow them to do that, and repeatedly do that, which is fascinating to me. So like the Heinz one, they have ads and acts. I know that was a thing. And so it kind of reminds me of the promise to the customer as well, where it was seemingly ranch, that thing.
Yeah.
And so in a moment, they're able to turn this around. And in the case of Heinz, the act was that they had a product called, what was it called again? Not it's a weird word. Cranch. Yeah. So they already had the product, but then they could just put new labels on it, seemingly ranch. So then the message isn't just a hollow message. It also is backed up by the product. I know one thing they didn't talk about, but I know is the work they've done is the Shohei Ohtani and Coors Light can, where
the pixel.
Shohei Ohtani hit a dinger and knocked out the lights on the billboard right when the Coors Light can was on.
Yeah.
And then it blacked out a square.
Yeah.
On the Jumbotron.
That was amazing.
And then they turned that around into an ad, which then became this viral sensation, which then they turned into a cans, collector edition cans, which then turned into like Coors Light being the number one requested beer in Japan. And then it became, and they started supplying Japan. It's this whole thing where it just caught fire, but they fueled it all along the way. And so the nimbleness of an organization to be able to do that and the trust they have in being able to do that starts with, I think, that relationship accelerator as a platform where you work out some of the details around, like, what is it like to be good? What does bad look like? What are the borders around this brand playbook that we can work in? And if we're in this, will you sign off on stuff like this?
Totally.
Yes, no, cool. And then they're able to execute almost in real time with that read and react kind of approach, which I think is fascinating.
And it's paramount to have success.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to summarize this podcast, it's emphasis on structure, on the creative processes, is maintaining the really strong client relationship, removing those barriers internally through that, like you said, that relationship accelerator, but then having that cultural awareness to drive really successful advertising campaigns. I think it was Morgan that kept talking about this. It's like you have to be naturally curious to look at everything that's happening in your world or around you in that moment to see how you can put that into effect successfully for your client.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that natural curiosity, then you'll miss out on some of those real, dare I call them, like viral moments, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it was an awesome conversation.
It was great.
They were so good. And they do such great work, to your point at the beginning. Like, it was really fun. I feel like it was a masterclass in a lot of ways.
I agree.
It's just
this podcast is a masterclass for marketers.
Yeah, exactly. It totally is.
That's our new positioning.
Yeah. Go chase profitability with your masterclass in marketing. Brought to you by
the Sleeping Barber. Or V Marc, I guess.
Either way.
Anyways, it was great. Karen, Morgan, if you're still listening, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Actually, exactly. It was nice to record in local time. We don't do that very often, but always appreciated.
Yeah. Okay, V. Well, we'll talk to you soon again.
Yeah, man.
Very soon.
Very soon, actually.
Yeah.
Got another
Thank you for
recording.
listening and keeping us in your ears.
There it is. Let's just make it a thing. That's our thing. Done.
Yeah. We got a lot of things. I'm just going to say the thing. We got a lot of things.
We got. I love that. I love that. All right, buddy.
All right.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye.